Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting, number 161. My name is Long for Wisdom. I'm one of the governance facilitators at MakerDAO. I'm chairing this meeting for you all today. Yeah, as usual, we've got a little bit of an agenda to get through. We've got a presentation, which you should be able to see now. So yeah, we're going to have our usual governance roundup. We're going to have a couple of team-led discussions. This week, we have a discussion around market making, and also a discussion around legal insurance. And then if we get through all that and we've got some time left over, we'll open things up and sort of people will be invited to ask questions or start conversations or start a conversation. So yeah, just a general sort of I guess rules for the call. The team-led discussions will be sort of introduced by people from Maker. After which, feel free to chime in, comment, and sort of share your thoughts. And then in the open discussion, I'll invite anyone to sort of extend to other topics. All right, let's move forward. Cool. So updates on votes first. Yeah. So polls last week, we had off-board USDT collateral types poll, which passed. Fairly successfully. I believe this wasn't sort of super stressful, I guess, because the collateral type in question only had 720 DAI generated from it. So there's that one. Also worth noting is that we passed 8 ratification polls. They finished. So Pablo is going to go into a bit more detail in those in our MIPs section. And then we still have 2 green light polls active, which end on Monday for SBDDC and REIF drop. So yeah, please give those away if you haven't already. Cool. In terms of executives, so last week we had an executive adjusting option parameters and testing L2 components. That was passed and executed last week. So we will have an executive tomorrow. It will include the aforementioned offboarding of USDT collateral types, and will also include core unit budgets and MKR vesting for a couple of core units, as per the MIP ratification polls. All right, which brings us to MIPs. So yeah,
okay.
Pablo.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Pablo here. So ratification polls closed on Monday 27th, and we'll do a quick review of the results. So we have a new MIP 58, Real World Assets Foundations, and we are welcoming 4 new core units. We have the Strategic Happiness core units, the DAX core unit, the StarkNet Engineering core unit, and the Collateral Engineering Services. And also 3 budgets were accepted, 1 for SES, 1 for Risk, and 1 for GovAlpha. For stuff in RFC, we'll go through the latest additions. So we have these ones we've already mentioned last week, MIP 60, which sets the processes for MakerDAO to determine which actors manage which intangible assets. We also have a sub-proposal that upgrades the MIP 6 application template by adding new real-world asset-specific questions. Real World Finance core unit has added 2 budget sub-proposals, 1 for their MKR compensation. And we have our first MIP 55 C3 sub-proposal, that is a special purpose fund, in this case, that requires funds to conduct a feasibility study of Singaporean debt security frameworks. Can we, yes. So frozen proposals likely to enter October's formal submission. By likely here, I mean proposals that have seen recent activity, budgets, and proposals whose authors have been in touch with me. We have 2 budgets, 1 for growth and 1 for the content production core unit, and 3 core unit sub-proposal sets, 1 for Merkle Labs, data insights, and DECO fixed rates. Moving forward, we just have deployed a new iteration of the MIPS portal, and internationalization is in place. So we will have to start working on translating stuff, but that's pretty cool. We've also added support for customized views. This will make searching through the results of, for example, the sub-proposals in force in relation to a specific core unit much easier to parse than it is now. Currently, it's a bit of a mess. And we are pretty much on the verge of entering maintenance modes. I thought we would have dark mode ready by this week, but that will have to wait until next week. And yeah, that's pretty much all from me.
Pablo, I have a quick question about the internationalization piece.
Yes.
So I remember Mariano Conti at one point started a project for like this internationalization, like getting all of the different DeFi and blockchain terms crowdsourced and translated into these different standards. Is that something that's on your radar?
Yes, I read about that. And yes, that's something that could be used. I didn't get that far, but yes, that's something I'm aware of, and yes, might come in handy.
All right, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that that exists.
Yeah, I know that exists.
Cool,
Yes,
cool, cool.
yeah.
All right. Moving on from MIPs then. I believe we have Artem to give us our forum update.
All right, just posting the link. All right, welcome to the Forum at a Glance, a weekly review of what's happened on the forums for the week of September 24th to September 30th. Let's begin with the week's top announcements. We're beginning with Layer 0 from SES Core Unit, who introduces SES Legal, which is used for legal and regulatory topics and initiatives. He also announces their self-insurance fund, which will cover legal costs, economic damages to third parties, and can be used as a legal reserve for obtaining a legal opinion or advice. There's a lot more detail, which can be found in the post, so check that out. Next up, Jezelnik from Risk Core Unit follows up on previous 3 vault behaviors, the analysis which were posted, and he presents a methodology for assessing the vault level risks. Their next step is to integrate the insights from this analysis into their quantitative models to keep improving the proposal process of maker risk parameters. Next up, the plan for legal entities acting as a conduit for real-world assets is to diversify the jurisdictional risk. Therefore, Sebastian from Real World Finance Core Unit announced that the Nebula Capital Vault may help accelerate their schedule to the country of Jersey. The Jersey Foundation could be used for European real-world asset investments, which is cool. So let's move on to our top 3 discussions. First-time poster, BPM 6867 from FEI Protocol initiates a community discussion on creating a FEI PSM to further diversify DAI collateral with the addition of decentralized USD stablecoin. Next up, we have Planet X, who points out weaknesses in Maker's current negotiation methods. He proposes a sequence of solutions by splitting up incoming proposals to help prevent binary offerings and automate the function of negotiation, ultimately leaving it up to the MKR holders on how badly they want the deal to happen. And finally, Chris Cameron inquires whether Maker can and should require an affirmative acceptance of a term of service or end user license agreement on-chain for wallet the first time it interacts with the protocol. And if so, do we want to further explore this idea? We have an active signal request that will be open until October 6th. In response to the proposed delegate compensation, Chris Cameron is signal requesting a one-time lump sum of 50,000 DAI outside of any delegate compensation that may or may not be forthcoming in the future when both Chris Cameron and the community feel that he has delivered value to the DAO. For more information on the forum at a glance, check out the post provided. It includes a 3-point summary, ongoing initiatives, help wanted. Also, it includes more announcements and more discussions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Artem. All right, so that closes out our governance roundup section of the call. So I'm moving into team-led discussions. I believe we're starting with market making. Nadia, are you happy to give us an intro into this?
Yes, yes. Hello, everyone. Well, today I invited Jonathan from Wintermute, who I have been talking with because when we were at the foundation, we were working with different market makers to like neutral market makers to increase volume in different markets of MKR and DAI. Now that the foundation is gone, I think this is an important discussion that we should have inside the community to like understand first if we want to do it or not, understand why we should do it or why we shouldn't. And please, I don't have the answers for that. Like I have been thinking about it. I have been reviewing the MKR token in different markets. I think that the volume is not the optimal volume that it should have. And it could be a problem when, for example, the bonus vested for all the core units. And if someone wants to sell their MKR, I hope they're not, but you never know, that could be an issue. So it's just like important to discuss this topic and between everyone, like understand what we should do. Of course, we also, if we decide that this is something that the DAO should do, then next step will be to think about how we are going to manage that, because usually how market makers work is we give them a loan of MKR or DAI, so they can do this neutral market making in different markets. Of course, we can like help them to decide in which markets we want them to be more focused in, and also listen to their suggestions. So although Wintermute could be one, and I choose them because they are the more important market maker for crypto in the market. But of course, the idea will be to have this opportunity open to all other market makers who could be interested in working with us. So if we decide that we want to do this, we should like think about a new type of proposal to give them this type of loans and understand what are their conditions to help us with this. So Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Jonathan Chan, I work at Wintermute. I also have Yuri, our head of DeFi, joining us as well on the call. First off, thank you very much for having us. It's quite an honor to be on the call, first off. I could give you a brief introduction about Wintermute and what we do if you know some of the members have not heard about it. Wintermute, the core of the business is a trading firm in a market neutral capacity. And currently we are trading across 60 different venues at this point. This is across CeFi and DeFi. If you haven't heard of Wintermute, you know, we're very good trading, you know, a lot of assets across centralized exchanges, but the shine and allure of Wintermute is the fact that we do trade a very good amount on decentralized exchanges. And when I say a good amount, I mean, you know, probably a vast majority of Ethereum chain volumes flow through our bots. And I think that's the one thing that we could really help out with, as Nadia was saying, is we can never guarantee volumes. We can never also guarantee the movement, the price appreciation of any asset that we trade. Again, we are market neutral, where we layer our quotes in an equal manner on both sides across the bid and the ask. And we definitely reduce those price impacts on the way up and also on the way down. Also, because Wintermute is so DeFi focused, we're able to trade across centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges very efficiently. So what this means for your users is we're able to generate more fees, more rewards on the DEXs. Also, because Wintermute trades a significant amount on centralized exchanges, we'll be able to provide more liquidity for users on those platforms as well. On top of that, we have a pretty robust OTC disk at this point, whether that's via a manual Telegram chat or over the phone, but also through our via our API as well, where if we were to add a sufficient inventory to our trading vaults, we're able to ping our counterparties that we trade with that we're able to provide a good amount of inventory and very good pricing on the trade execution for Maker. And that's some of the aspects that Wintermute does as a whole. On top of trading is very, I guess, vanilla. But again, the allure of Wintermute is the work that we do on the DeFi side, I guess. And I'm sorry, I guess I could also circle back with, generally how we operate is on a loan basis where, Wintermute asks for a certain amount of a loan and we fund the complete other side of that leg. So the ETH, the USDT, USDC, the BTC on Coinbase, the Euro GBP, we're the only market maker that funds that side of the currency leg. And there's no fees associated with us, but we do ask for a call option attached to that loan amount. Again, the call option is to protect us and to hopefully reaping the benefits of the project's success. But we are market neutral. I want to be very, I want to emphasize that where we can't control the price movements on each asset that we trade. And we have standardized our commercials on the projects that we've partnered with. But we really feel that this case is more strategic, and it's a very reputation, where we want to build and help Maker out. So we've moved our commercials completely on the other end, where we just want to work together. And definitely want to propose that to the community to see, put up for a vote. As at the end of the day, we want to be flexible to be working with, and we want to promote the project.
By the way, Jonathan, that you mentioned about the OTC, that's super interesting. And I don't know if Seb is here, because that will be super useful for all the real world asset deals that we have on pipeline. So that's also something that we can use.
So for every project that we partner with, we do offer our OTC desk as a service for free, in a capacity where we need to fully KYC AML onboard the individuals or entities that we trade with, because we are UK regulated and we are fully regulated entity. So after that, we're able to, whether you want to buy or sell, that is confidential information that we keep to Wintermute. We're able to, if you're looking to buy, provide those counterparties with a very good pricing. If we don't have enough inventory and if we don't trade the asset, we can't do that. And technically, most likely they would not buy because it's poor pricing, right? On the flip side, if they're looking to sell to, take in some of their gains, we're able to provide a very good price to protect the price of the coin and reduce slippage, because we have inventory and because we're able to hedge out that risk across all the venues that we trade on. So that's via the manual process, but also OTC, we kind of group it together. We're able to stream Maker through the counterparties, the institutional counterparties that we trade with, and their internal trading desks or their clients can use their discretion on how to trade it. If they don't have inventory, they generally go one way.
I have a question.
Of course.
Would Wintermute be participating or barring itself from participation in Maker governance with the lended MKR?
Yeah, no, so this is strictly for liquidity provisions. We don't yield farm with this. Again, we want to be very clear that this is strictly to help the liquidity provisions of Maker, nothing else.
Yes, I don't know, Andrew, if you are here, because I know you're always worried about MKR price and low volumes in the exchanges. Maybe if you can jump here and tell us. Yeah.
I called Greg the other day. I was kind of unaware of how, I know that we've been rather illiquid for quite a while. So, one person selling knocks the price down, one person buying knocks the price up. So, Greg floated some ideas of having a market maker. Didn't mention you guys necessarily, but some other players that I have mixed feelings about, like their own ethics, but I don't think I've ever heard anything too negative about Wintermute. So I'd be more than happy to see you guys be our market makers.
I want to be clear. We are market neutral trading
Yeah.
firm. So, if our quotes get hit on the buy side, we're doing vice versa to hedge out our risk somewhere else, to what our algorithms and the market conditions are at that point. It's, I've been asked this many, many times. We can't influence the price of coin. And I want to be very clear on that.
Yeah, I think I don't think you guys should be, pushing the price one way or the other. It's just that I guess you guys would be blunting the if you just would mute the market movements to a degree.
That is correct. And the good thing about your coin is it already trades on a decent amount of venues. I guess not specifically for Maker, but for some other assets that we partner with, we try to help those tokens get listed on other centralized exchanges. I mean, this isn't necessarily the case for Maker, right? It's already listed on many, many venues. But because we have access and we're integrated with so many different venues across DeFi and DeFi, we're able to, if there's one large seller or buyer on one venue, we're able to, kind of reduce that impact and aid in price discovery across all the different venues that we trade on. And again, one big thing about Wintermute, I'm not saying anything bad about any other market making firm or trading firm. They're all really, really good in their respect. Wintermute just is really good on dexes, right? We trade a large amount of volumes on all the decentralized exchanges. So we're able to aid in price discovery there. And again, generate rewards for your users on those platforms as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just having a more liquid market, I think is just really important. And yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to see you guys take this over. Yeah, I guess Maker manuals or someone else.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, going with the Nicola question. Yes, usually when we talk with an exchange, it's a super important part to have a market maker helping us, because one of the requirements, like it's the same as we are now having with the collaterals. Like if we have a collateral that is not profitable, we want to offboard that collateral. So it's something similar with exchanges. They are looking for listing pairs that are profitable for them. So if they have a low liquidity token in their exchange, like it's like very hard to maintain that one. So that's why usually when we talk with exchanges, we have like to commit on providing them a market making service or work with their own market makers. So yeah, when we were at the foundation, well, we used to do that in-house with LPL, but now we don't have LPL and we don't have a foundation. So it's also important to have like other participants in the DAO doing that. So what I'm thinking is that maybe Wintermute could be one, and after them we can like also start working with others.
So is the goal here to start market making on new markets where we want DAI to start to get a moat, or is the idea also to market make on existing markets for more depth? And I'm also curious about the sizing of these activities. So how much MKR and DAI is a recommendable amount to give per market maker? I'm curious how you view those.
Yeah, so this at first would be for Maker, and again, I have Yuri on the call as well, who's our head of DeFi. We've been working with DAI for I think a couple of years now, and I think he get to some technical aspects that even behind the scene that we're doing to help promote it before this call has happened, and I'll pass it to him in 1 second. But generally with our market making agreements, we have standardized it to a certain amount, and I don't want to say it's a specific equation, but it is given market cap, volumes, venues traded as well, because we just need sufficient supply. Again, if the treasury only has ability to give us, $5 million equivalent worth of Maker, it's really not going to do much of an impact. If someone on our OTC desk, an institution on our OTC desk, asks for $10 million worth of a trade, we're not going to be able to facilitate that trade for them, on top of being able to layer all the quotes on all the different venues that you trade on. So a sufficient supply is definitely, you know, what we need to do our jobs properly. That's A. And then to touch base on the call option, generally we ask for around 10 to 20% higher price than when we receive assets. In this case, we're very willing to work with your team. So with the team, so, you know, we're willing to go 100% above asset price when we get delivery of Maker, which I don't think we've ever done before. Again, this is more strategic sense in the case where we just really want to work with you guys at the end of the day.
I have a question.
Man has his hand up.
Yep.
Sorry.
Hello.
All right. It's a question for Jonathan. It's also been asked in the chat here. That is the target amount you're asking, or the target liquidity, because you have you know, sometimes you have coins with too little liquidity, and it can also be argued that some coins have too much liquidity. So I guess there's a sweet spot somewhere, and you probably made those calculations already.
Well, I don't know if a coin can have too much liquidity, right? Like coming from the market making side, it's very advantageous for your users to have a lot of liquidity, right? Because when they enter a trade, whether it's in or out, they're more confident to get the price that they would get, right? So I tend to disagree on having too much liquidity, especially in cryptos, I guess. Also, to go back on how we've standardized our market making agreements, generally we ask for around 1 to 2% of total supply. And again, the call option is pegged to around 10 to 20% higher value of when we receive assets. In this case, we could definitely go for a less loan amount. And as I mentioned before, we really want to work with you guys, so we're going with 100% higher for the call option premium than when we receive assets. And again, I don't think we've never done that before, but this is a different case where we're willing to work to make something happen.
So let me ask the question here, because I asked it in chat. So you're talking target liquidity of what, 10 to 20,000 Maker here with a 100% upside price option?
That is correct. And 10 to 20 is probably higher than what I was looking for already. I think initially when I spoke to Nadia, we were looking at around 7,500.
Okay, the reason, so you say, lots of liquidity is good. You have to realize with governance, with Maker, that a certain amount of Maker can come and float an executive, right? And so there's an inherent concern that too much liquidity groups into the market so that can happen too quickly, right? Now you KYC your clients, so we would kind of know who that is in principle, but it was why I asked the question. And then what's the downside on that? Thank you for the answer, by the way.
I'm sorry, downside for what specifically?
Yeah, someone's going to buy, right? And so you want an option from us at 100% upside risk, but what if somebody wants to sell like 20,000, like A16Z, right?
Huh?
Now, are you going to take that buy, or are you going to float it back to us?
No. This is all principal capacity. So what that means is we're taking that risk, where if a large holder of Maker wants to sell via our OTC desk, we will give them a price, and theoretically speaking, because we have sufficient inventory, we give them a pretty good price, and then we hold on to that risk, and then we hedge out that sell order across all the venues our algorithms say at that point, or whatever time frame that it needs to be hedged out in, and that's our risk. We don't pass that back on to you guys at all.
Oh, let me follow up on that then. So what you're saying is you're going to take the cash downside, right, and hedge it out, but you want to have an option for the 100% upside in case you need to source liquidity. Is that the deal here?
No, so the call option, I'm sorry, the call option is only, it's European style, so it's only exercisable after 12 months. So theoretically speaking, let's just say, I think the price was like 22.50 when I last looked. So call it 4,500 is the exercisable call option that Wintermute has after 12 months. We would theoretically be able to purchase the loan amount at $4,500 per token. That's theoretically what we would be able to do. Although that being said, because we are a market neutral trading firm, we would rather continue the relationship by rolling this loan at a higher call strike if it were there, because we don't want to be exposed to the price movement of your coin. In that sense, where, you know, if we were to actually own and not borrow a coin, the price goes down, we lose money. The price goes up, we make money. We don't want that at all, right? We just want to make money trading the coin. Price agnostic is the business of Wintermute.
Okay, I got that. So what are you asking us for? Basically that call option?
It's
Just to hedge your risk? Is that the deal?
Yes, it's to capture the upside as well, and the loan. We just need the loan to trade. We don't on any asset that we trade go out in the open market generally and purchase it again, because we don't want to be exposed to the price movement of any coin that we trade. That's why our Sharpe ratio
I
is
guess
so
my
high.
last question on this, I'd have to think about this more, but how does Maker make money off this, I guess is the question.
So it's, I guess, a domino effect. There isn't. I mean, I'm not trying to sell you anything, right? It's just it's a liquidity provision service that we provide, and also our OTC desk as well, where, you know, your users can have a sense of confidence that they're able to execute their pricing, whether it's a buy or sell order, at a certain level. That's one. And then once we add the asset, that we have sufficient inventory to our OTC desk, our institutional OTC counterparties that we trade with can have confidence that they could trade through us as well. So I don't know how Maker makes money on that, but it's for the general health of Maker, and, you know, to have more exposure to the users as well.
So, Makerman, if you're done, I actually have a question as well. So yeah, hi Jonathan. You mentioned a few times that you were sort of excited to work with Maker and were sort of, I guess, going past what you would usually do. So my question is, like, why are you so excited to work with Maker as opposed to other things? Like,
I'm gonna obviously Maker such a big name, right? But I'm gonna pass this on to Yuri as well, on to some of the technical side that we've already done with Maker and DAI.
Hello, everyone. A good question about why we want to work with Maker. We are one of very not many market makers generally in the space that has a DeFi team on board, and Maker is a protocol that was live in DeFi for a very long time now. It's probably one of the biggest and one of the most trusted protocols out there. And on top of that, we have been working with DAI and trading DAI and Maker for a very long time now, over 2 years. So I think at this point, it's just for us something that we would really love to do, rather than a business deal that we get from any other project.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Pretty much, do you want to pass that on, Mike?
Yeah, just asking if this loan is uncollateralized, I assume, and zero interest.
Yes, it is uncollateralized loan and zero interest.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, it's important to understand that they are providing a service to the DAO. So like, that's why they need the capital to start deploying that capital in different exchanges, centralized and decentralized. And the way they are going to like earn something doing this is with the call option after 12 months.
I'd be happy. I understand there's a time constraint on everyone. I'll drop my Telegram handle or email here as well. I'd be happy to, you know, jump on another call or ask me any questions through Telegram or email. Happy to assist and walk through the process. Understand it's something relatively new that some of you guys might be hearing from, but we do have a decent amount of relationships and partnerships with other DAOs as well in a market making capacity. And, you know, don't need to take my word for it. I'll shoot some here and see how their relationship is with us and also what their experiences are, I guess.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Cheers for coming on. Good to meet. All right, David, let's maybe move forwards. So that brings us to our second topic of the day, the week, I should say. So we have sustainable ecosystem scaling at layer 0, introducing the idea of a self-insurance fund. Layer 0.
Thank you very much, Long. Can you give me please permission to share my screen?
Yeah, 2 seconds. There you go.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Layer 0 from SES. I want to talk to you today about a project that we are working on SES, a project about an important legal issue. We have in SES a special working group dealing with legal and regulatory topics. We are working on several projects. This is the first one that we want to share with the community. It's about creation of a self-insurance fund, a legal self-insurance fund for MakerDAO. Basically, what is, let me start here. So what is the problem that we want to address with the self-insurance fund? First of all, after the dissolution of the foundation, the DAO stakeholders, DAO active members will be exposed to new layers of legal and regulatory risk. And as we all know, as MakerDAO doesn't have a legal entity, and the main purpose of legal entities is to limit the liability of its members. So we don't have, after the dissolution of the foundation, we don't have this protected veil anymore. Second, we think that the risk that soon, maybe in the next year, somebody of the MakerDAO ecosystem is target of a lawsuit or a regulatory action, I think that is likely. If we see what the SEC, the security regulator in the US, have been doing in the last weeks, very active against very well-known names of the DeFi space, this is a real risk. And what will happen if the foundation is not anymore, if legal counsel is not there anymore in dealing with this stuff? So in other words, the risk has been transferred. Earlier was in head of the foundation. Now this risk has been transferred to all of us, to individual contributors or legal entities that are interacting with the DAO, that are providing services to the DAO. So we have to deal with that. The need of legal advice and legal defense of MakerDAO participants is evident. That was the topic of the call last week. We need that at very different layers. And we also need a strategy for meeting the legal needs of the DAO in this new context without a legal counsel, without a centralized entity. So that's why we want to introduce the idea of a self-insurance fund. And what is a self-insurance fund? It is a risk management technique which consists in setting funds aside for compensating a possible future loss, what it's called a contingent liability. And in the legacy world, companies use that for covering things like health costs for employees, or like liability claims and this kind of things. For us, for MakerDAO, I think we could use such a fund in 3 ways, in 3 different layers. First of all, we could use the fund for paying the legal costs of defense if somebody is sued or somebody is target of a regulatory action. So this first layer only includes the reimbursement of the cost of defense. Yeah, it's a reactive if somebody has to pay a lawyer for defending himself. The second layer, which is more complex, it is much larger in scope, is this fund could be used to cover the cost if somebody loses a process, right? If a court of justice determines that somebody is liable and occasioned damage to a third party, has to pay damage to a third party, it could be huge, huge sums. So the fund could be used in the second layer to cover this part also. It could be used to cover settlements. As you know, in processes, it is common that parties make negotiations for terminating the process, and sometimes they agree on a settlement. The fund could be used also for paying settlements. And third, it could be used in an administrative process. If a regulator imposes a fine or a penalty to somebody, then the fund could be also used to cover this. So these first two is more reactive, and the third one that became evident in the last week call is we could also use this fund for paying for legal opinion on urgent matters. For example, on the legal risk of the implementation of a MIP or a new technological feature. Last week, the topic of discussion was, well, we have this need of having a legal check, or some type of legal risk analysis of new MIPs. Well, this self-insurance fund could be also used to paying for this advice. The interesting thing is that this self-insurance fund can be used as a first layer for other insurances products. So those of you who have tried to get a D&O insurance, you know how hard it is to get that in crypto. So how it works is, let's say we have with a self-insurance fund a coverage up until 10 million for economic damages. And then you can go into an insurance market, and for the excess of that, you can find an insurance product that is now unavailable. It will become available if you have this first layer covered by this self-insurance fund. So who will be covered? So that is probably like the first question that we have to discuss. Who will be covered? I think at very least, this fund should cover permanent contributors and facilitators of core units. It should cover delegates or governors of the system that have a high stake and that are identifiable, such as delegates. I think we should also protect our developers. And how to implement it, I think that the special purpose fund in MIP 55 could be an ideal tool for implementing this fund. Actually, in MIP 55, it is explicitly said that one of the use cases could be to use this fund for a legal reserve fund. So what I want to open the discussion, there are, of course, a lot of details that we have to consider and decide, but I would like to discuss more strategic, general idea. First of all, gather your opinion if this idea is a good idea that we should prioritize. And second, there are three main questions that we should decide on. The first one is who will be covered. The second is which jurisdictions, right? So I think ideally we should cover all the jurisdictions where DAO members are domiciled. So we should need to know where are they, in which countries in the world, and then decide if you are going to start with as arguably the most important one, the highest risk one is the US. It's the more complex one, but it's the highest risk one. If you should start with the highest risk, or we should start with a pilot project in another jurisdiction. And third of all, about the risk layer, about these three risk layers, which one do you find more important, or if all of three are important in your opinion? So that's a super short introduction about the project, and we'd like to open it for discussions and questions.
I guess I'll launch a question. So it was a curiosity of who actually insures on this kind of stuff? I had no clue who would insure on this kind of stuff and what the insurance agreements would look like. Do you have any idea on the who would take the secondary side of this with a high deductible and what those things look like?
I think reinsurance companies can take the excess of loss. And regarding the structure of the fund, there are specialized legal advisors in the insurance industry that help structure these funds. I think we should hire one of these. So that the next step, when we decide what are our priorities, is to go to one of these offices. There are law offices that are specialized in insurance and in structuring these funds. And the first step is to structure the fund. The first step is to get a quote and say how large is the fund and how much it costs to structure it. And then we can find in the insurance on the reinsurance market how to cover the rest of the risk. But the first layer is to cover this first part.
Seems reasonable. Thanks for bringing this up, by the way. I think it'll lead to some interesting discussions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I feel like I might be misunderstanding a little bit. Is self-insurance not just we keep a pool of money to pay for these things?
Yeah.
Our external insurance providers involved here or not?
Yeah, it will work like a deductible, right? And then in a deductible, the deductibles are a bit like a way of self-insurance, right? So you take the risk up to a certain amount, and the insurance cover the excess of this amount. So that would be like something similar. We set aside, we pay for this first layer of risk, and then we can go and look for products in the insurance market that help us transfer the rest of the risk. So there is a way of transferring the rest of the risk, but we have to deal with it now, because now we are in a vulnerable position. If somebody sues somebody in the maker ecosystem, or regulator investigates somebody, so we have this risk of legal costs and damages and fines that right now are not covered, but it is possible to cover them. But the first condition is to have one of these self-insurance funds schemes ready.
For clarity, are you implying that we need to have a fund with capital inside of it, or a vault that has the ability to draw against that amount?
I think both could work. I think we had the important thing. So these type of things are, we don't know in which frequency they will come. That's one of the things that we have to decide. Maybe if it's enough, if we have the possibility of getting funds, if there is a large case, that's something that we have to decide. So what will be the next, the best structure to do it? If we use this special purpose fund, who will manage the multi-sig? So there are many questions. If we need a trust or some type of legal structure to handle this in the traditional legal world, yeah, probably. In our case, I don't know yet. But first we have to decide on the scope and the coverage, and then see how can we structure it.
So, like other questions. So one of the things you mentioned using it for was sort of settlements and things, right? And paying out, like, you know, the kind of results of, I guess, these law cases, right? Or, yeah, I don't know the terminology. Anyway, so I'm kind of curious about, do you worry that will like increase risk, right? Like if there's a big amount of money that's sort of there to pay for us being, if we're successfully sued, do you think that will increase the frequency or likelihood of people suing? You know, some of us.
I do see this risk. I think, well, in the traditional world, you would keep all of these things very confidential, right? And we have to wait. So if we all know that transparency is in the DNA of Maker, but on the other hand, I think we don't have to publish all the details publicly. So that's one thing that we should be like cognizant about is, what part of this discussion should be held publicly. If we promote and it's publicly known that we have a fund of X million, that could eventually go against us. So I would try to keep details more confidential about the amounts and the coverage, or at least like permissioned only for DAO members.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess looking at the whole sort of thing, right? The first idea is great, right? Because it's sort of this will fund legal defense, which is great because that also immediately makes it less likely that people are going to sue someone because there's going to be a massive fund that's going to protect them.
Yeah.
So that bit being sort of very explicit is maybe good, but maybe the settlement part is something that, if possible, should be left like less explicit, right?
Yes, exactly. That's a good idea.
Hey, is it all right if I just jump in?
Yeah, please do.
Hey, I'm Nathan Vandy. It's my first meeting, actually. Really great to join this governance call. So I actually work for a non-profit organization in Belgium where we support DAOs with law and governance, and on both operation level and also on a policy level as well. And as part of this fund, I was wondering if you've looked at the assessment of whether it'll be good to actually look at the individual jurisdictions on a corporate law level and see which members of MakerDAO are currently exposed and see if there could be some sort of education with the legislators about why certain members of an open protocol shouldn't actually be held liable in any issues. So for example, in most jurisdictions, developers of open source protocols don't have any liability unless they actually act out of bad faith and create bad code. And the same can possibly be applied for contributors in open source protocols such as Maker DAO, which are providing services for this open protocol, which anyone can join, right? And I was wondering if part of the self-insurance fund was actually put aside to look into this area as well, to make sure that it's less of a reactive measure and then more of a proactive measure as well.
Yeah, that's perfectly thinkable. So we can structure it. The interesting thing is that we can structure it tailor-made to what we need. And I think developers are more exposed in a DAO context than in a company context. And in some cases, developers appear as the DAO does not exist as a legal entity. And so somebody has to be like the official provider of a service that appear in the terms and conditions, right? And sometimes that needs to be the developer or the company of a developer. So there is a higher exposure to risk. And that could be perfectly thinkable. That is not only reactive, but also proactive. Yeah, that we could also implement that.
It sounds like that's maybe something worth looking into though, because I didn't think I'd heard that sort of point of view on any of the legal stuff before. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Nathan. That was awesome. Anyone else have any comments or questions for Layer Zero?
I had a question in chat.
Yeah, please read it out if you can.
So I'm just wondering, like I've seen the idea that personal risk is something that we compensate people more highly for in the DAO. You know, would this fund then take away that premium? And is that something that contributors even want? Like, if I was a contributor, I'd rather have an increased compensation personally, so I feel confident that I don't have to petition the DAO to come to my rescue if something goes wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So we could structure it that way that you have, if somebody has to pay for legal defense, then we use the fund for refunding. You don't have to ask somebody in the DAO to defend or to pay. So you have maybe to pay upfront and solicit reimbursement for all the legal costs. That's what you mean, Greg?
Well, I mean, like there's always a choice for somebody for the DAO to decide not to reimburse you or not to defend you out of this fund. So if you just have a higher income baked into your salary, then, you know, is it possible to do it that way? Or like, you know, what are the trade-offs here is my question, because I'm pretty sure that there's some premium baked into salaries where you're compensating that risk right now.
Yeah, in some form, yes. In some form, yeah, that probably a compensation Maker above the market average, and they include some type of risk premium. I agree with that. But on the other hand, personal liability risk for me is the most important legal risk that we have at the DAO, and that could ruin somebody. Right? And I think we need not only for protecting our labor force, but for attracting new talent. If we have a solid risk management framework for limiting this liability risk, because these damages, this could be huge, and it could ruin a business or ruin a person. And I think the premium, the salaries premium that we may have at Maker does not compensate all the hidden liability risks that could arise if something goes wrong in the protocol. Whom they will go after? So there's no foundation to go after. They will go after somebody that they can sue, that they say publicly identifiable, and the risk. Yeah, so theoretically, with no legal entity, theoretically, in many jurisdictions of the world, the default entities are general partnerships, which implies that theoretically anybody could be held liable for the whole liabilities of the project. And that is more like a theoretical risk. So, but it can happen, yeah. And we need to generate, so we don't have that, maybe legislation is not advanced enough to generate on the legal side, on the law, more protection for liability protection for the workers of a DAO, because DAOs are so new. And I think they will come, but we have to have something until we have new legislation. I think it will come, and there are some frameworks in Wyoming, the DAO limited liability companies, DAO limited liability wrappers for DAOs. We are investigating at SCS some of these hybrid organizational models, but those are experimental topics. And I think we need something practical that we could implement in the next 3 to 6 months. And this is something like practical, and that has been used in the legacy world. And I think it's a condition for
I'm not disagreeing in any of that. I'm just saying, from a practical perspective, the funding of the program should probably be done through, people paying in. Like you mentioned, this is not in the legacy economy. Like employees pay into these insurance pools in the legacy economy.
I see. Well, we can consider that. We can consider that.
Greg, is there like when an employee leaves, do they get their contribution back? Like, what's like the standard for this kind of thing? This is also the first I've ever heard of it.
No one can claw back insurance premiums.
Got it. Okay.
I have a question. Why do we need a fund? And what happens if today someone is suing anyone from MakerDAO? Because from my point of view, if someone is, let's say the SEC or someone else, is suing from the DAO, and at which point would we decide not to help this person? And we can just suck from the bat and be done with it.
Yeah, I think that's not like a sustainable strategy. I think if we ignore regulatory actions or enforcement letters and so on, I think we have to be compliant, and we have a large exposure to the real world finance, and they can get us in many places. And I think like not acting for me would not be like a viable strategy, not only for the person involved, but like for the project itself, because we want to go to the real world to serve the economy of the real world. And I think we have to be very careful with that, with what happens with actions of regulators.
Yeah, but do you mean that this fund is in the real world, and that all the members of the DAO will have a contract with this fund to be sure that they are reimbursed at some point?
Yeah, maybe we need we probably need some type of legal agreement or trust or some type of legal structure.
Okay. It's off-chain, so.
Yeah, it has a part of chain. We have to pay the lawyers, and somebody has to decide in a rule set how to manage the claims, and there are a lot of implementation issues. And yes, you need somebody in the real world, some type of structure in the real world. Yeah.
Doesn't super help people that are on if they need legal defense. If they need to have signed a contract in advance.
Yeah.
Wata, sorry, you've had your hand up for a while. If you want to comment, feel free.
Yeah, I just put my comment in chat. I think there's a second order effect where, yes, it may impact salaries, but it wouldn't be by having people pay out of their salaries. It would be by creating some competitive pressure as the risk perception in the DAO, or for risk perception of working for the DAO. If that improves, then one would assume that more new joiners would be willing to work for more market competitive rates. And I think that should be the mechanism that we aim for. I don't think taking it from people's compensation is a good idea.
Yeah, just to follow up from that, with these situations, leaving one individual exposed is not the best attitude to have, especially when you're working in open source spaces where you're collaboratively trying to build something together, because that creates the attitude of every man for himself, when this whole industry is about the exact opposite. And further to that, when it comes to liability issues that cover working in a DAO, at Wiseo, we did a coverage on organizations such as MakerDAO, and under majority of jurisdictions, they're going to be considered as joint unincorporated partnerships, which means that it's not an individual that will be taken on just their individual risk. An individual might be taken on the whole risk for multiple parties. And that's the main issue as well, on top of the attitude and orientation that is needed regarding this. I think definitely a few options might need to be considered. It sounds like there's already been certain steps taken forward, such as having limited liability companies when working with the DAOs, so that the individual's personal assets are protected and it's just the company's assets that can be protected. But maybe some more investigation needs to happen into this direction as well, so that the members that are working actually understand those risks more clearly as well. So there's a bit more education there for the different members too.
Okay, so maybe not, if no one has an immediate response, we're going to take a brief pause. Does anyone have anything beyond the discussion topics they want to bring up in this meeting? We've maybe got 10 minutes left, so if anybody else has anything else, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we can continue to talk about this till the end of the time. Right, well, I guess, sorry for interrupting, please carry on.
Wouter wanted to say something?
Well, it's a slightly different topic, but I just wanted to mention that in our incubation program, we are working with the different teams, explaining the liability risks and encouraging people to incorporate and have limit liability shield in case something happens. So there are some education efforts on that front going on. They should definitely be expanded and yeah, and improved further still, but that's ongoing.
All right.
That's kind of an interesting question. So you're suggesting pretty much everybody that works with Maker have their own limited liability, and at least in the US, an LLC?
We are suggesting for incubes that incorporated legal entities is one of the ways of limiting liability risk. It's not for everybody, but it's one of that's the main purpose of incorporating. I believe personally that legal entities should be more at the periphery, at the DAO, than more at the center. And but that's not enough, because that limits up to a certain extent the liability risk, but that is not enough if a very important core unit is target of a lawsuit and goes insolvent because has to pay a huge amount of damages. That could be not a problem of the core unit, that could be a problem for the protocol itself. So that covers part of the risk, and that one of the things that we have to analyze, which part is already covered at a core unit level or individual level, and what risk is left out, and use this self-insurance fund to cover the risk that right now is not covered.
I mean, that kind of brings up an interesting question of jurisdiction and kind of breaking core units up, right? I mean, if you think the painful jurisdiction is maybe U.S., okay, I'm just going to throw that out there, that you could have the protocol engineering break into a unit that's U.S. based and non-U.S. based, right? So if one part of a core unit comes under attack, the other part of the core unit can continue to still operate, right? And so I don't know, it's something to think about. I'm not saying this is a solution, but it's something to think about in terms of how we continue to operate if some piece of a unit comes into trouble in a jurisdiction, right? So I'll leave it there.
Exactly. Redundancy and parallel work is part of the strategy. If a unit gets impacted, is involved in some legal trouble, then we have to isolate this risk and not permit that this risk like spreads through the DAO. And one way to do it is having like parallel teams working on the same topic. Yeah.
Now, this is some kind of information that we would like to keep private. I mean, I was sitting here thinking, God, what we want is our workers to work through encrypted connections via VPNs. I mean, so that literally you start putting barriers between any element of trackability, right? Certain people who are kind of on front on this, publicly, you don't do that, but it kind of brings me back to that kind of model. I mean, I harken back to the old days when Bitcoin was considered dark web, right? And smart people were putting up all kinds of barriers between them being found, starting with Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Whoever that person was, right? And so it kind of harkens back to the old days of crypto. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here, guys.
Yeah, in some way it does, yeah.
All right, so we can maybe start thinking about wrapping up. If anyone has anything they want to bring up before the end, feel free.
Yeah, just to wrap up there, as Layer Zero said, it is a very slow process getting legal clarity regarding a lot of these matters, but there definitely are lawyers and academics who are actually involved into actually working alongside policymakers and regulators to attempt to do this, because it is a necessary moving forward to facilitate the clarity for people to move into the space without having to worry about things that people in the traditional finance industry don't have to worry about. So just to
absolutely. Legislation has to evolve. That would be part of a totally different call, and that is part also of our advocacy and public policy efforts. And yes, that's some place that we want to go, but it would exceed the scope of this call to discuss all of this.
I think that was a good summary, so maybe that's a good place to wrap up. We're approaching 1:15 anyway,
so thank you very much. The discussion will be open in the forum, and thank you for your feedback, and any of your ideas will be welcome as we progress with this project.
All right, yeah, thanks, Zuri, and thank you to Wintermute for that presentation earlier as well. All right, thanks everyone. I will talk to you all next week, if not before. Thanks for coming.